Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time. So, let's please turn off our phones and welcome this gentleman. I can't believe it. You've been so good that we've invited Len. This is his 11th time to be with us. And every time is enjoyable. And I think he's prepared to go up to number 20. So we'll send you back to school after that. At any rate, we're really happy that you're here again. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Vi. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all again. So to get everybody in the mood, we're looking at the Arctic. And that's where we're going to get intimate with two animals today, polar bears and Arctic fox. So we're going to start off with polar bears. Ursus maritimus, which means the sea bear. But they have a number of different names. In Eskimo language, they're called tiktok, meaning those who go down to the sea. The Inuit called them Nanook, meaning god of bears. The Europeans in the 13th century called them the ice bear. Now bears, scientists trace their origins back over 6 million years. Polar bears only go back about 400,000. They diverged from brown bears, okay? And they're actually much bigger than brown bears. Their distribution, as their name would sound, is Arctic. And Arctic, the word, comes from Greek arctos, meaning near the bear. And the ancient Greek mariners, called the area of the northern oceans, the Arctic, because from where they were in Greece and the Mediterranean, looking up to the constellation Ursa Major, meaning bear, they were near the bear when they were up in the Arctic Ocean. So that's where the name comes from. So just keep in mind, polar bears are from the Arctic, penguins are from the Antarctic, okay? So, they're basically circumpolar. This map here, you're looking down at the North Pole. Polar bears do not occupy the North Pole. It is too cold. They can only go down to about minus 50 degrees. So they're basically on the fringe areas. Basically, the annual ice flows just off the land masses. So your polar bear countries are basically Canada, when you're seeing here, Hudson Bay and the archipelago of Canada. Then you've got Alaska, the United States, Greenland. Occasionally it'll show up in Iceland, but normally you won't. Historically, if you went back at the height of the Ice Age, they had polar bears down in England, okay? But then also, you'll wind up having them through Russia and a little bit of Norway that we'll touch on. So that's basically where you see them. Their actual physical habitat is the annual sea ice flows over shallow coastal waters. And that serves as a hunting platform for them. People often think they catch fish. No, fish are too fast for them. The only time they get fish is in the summer when they maybe come ashore and dead fish have washed up on shore, but fish are too fast for them. They're basically at the ice shelf trying to catch seals when they come up on the ice. So the ice shelf is very important. We talked about global warming and you say, we talk about losing polar bears. The polar bear basically is the poster child. The Arctic ice shelf is extremely important to us because under that ice shelf, a lot of algae and plankton grows. That feeds smaller fish who in turn feed larger fish who in turn feed seals, which in turn feeds polar bears. And oh, by the way, we like eating fish too. So when you lose the Arctic shelf, you're not just losing polar bears, you're losing a lot of other life species in the United States and in the world. And the Arctic is basically the most fertile ocean in the world. Since the 1960s, we see more and more loss of sea ice and polar bears spending more time ashore. And this is causing a decline in polar bears because polar bears need to eat seals. They need the fat from the seals. They need to be out on the ice to do that. You know, they'll oftentimes, and I'll show you pictures of this, they'll stay for hours over a hole in the ice waiting for a seal to pop up to get them, because seals are much faster than they are, so they only get them when they come to the surface. So the only time they're really on land is summertime when the ice shelf pulls back, and the females will den along the coast within about 5 miles of the coast when they're going to when they're pregnant and going to give birth. So what color is a polar bear? Anybody? It's not white. It's not white. Everybody tells me white. It's not white. Each strand of polar bear fur is like a miniature clear hollow straw. And light bounces around inside of that like a prism. And the human eye and brain thinks it's white, but it's not. It's more translucent. And that's because sunlight, okay, polar bears are the most energy efficient animals you're going to find. Polar bears get some of their heat from the sun because the sunlight will pass through that clear fur to their black skin. The color black is the best color to absorb the heat of the sun. So they've got what looks like white fur. It's really translucent fur, 2 layers of it. There'll be outer guard hairs, and then underneath that, outer guard hairs about 6 inches, and underneath that are really thick, dense 2-inch hairs that help hold heat against the body. Weight-wise, they're going to be 800 to 1,700 pounds full grown, okay? Males are typically about twice the size of the females. If you remember Kalli at the St. Louis Zoo, Kalli was about 1,300 pounds. And basically, he was kept on a diet because you don't want to put in all that weight because that's fat that builds up on their body. That's what really keeps them warm when they're in the Arctic at minus 50. It doesn't get to minus 50 here in St. Louis. It might feel like it on some winter mornings, but it doesn't. So if he had all that fat at 1,700 pounds, carrying an extra 300 or 400 pounds worth of fat, he would overheat and really would have trouble surviving here. So they manage their diet. Males will stand 10.5 up to 10.5 feet tall, which is taller than all other bear species. Occasionally, you'll find a grizzly bear that might be bigger, but as a species, they're not bigger than polar bears. Interesting, if you look closely at this picture of a male, his neck is actually bigger than his head. Okay, so when they want to track polar bears, most of the time they track females who has a more slender neck to put a collar on them, because you put a collar on a male bear, it just slides right off his head. So you really can't track them. So they've been coming up with other things, radio tagging them, and with little devices attached to their ears and so forth to better track males. But as I said, they eat a lot of seals. Seals has a lot of fat, and that causes them to build a 4 to 5 inch thick layer of fat underneath that fur. And that's what really keeps them warm. And yeah, the fur keeps them warm, but at those extreme temperatures, they need a lot more fat. Their paws are like paddles. Their front paws in particular, they'll use those to paddle with, and they'll have sort of dermal bumps on the bottom, along with a fur covering, the dermal bumps to give them traction. Now notice their claws. I put a picture of their claw, the polar bear claw, compared to the grizzly bear claw. Look how much thicker it is, and it's shorter. You know, so it's really working like a cleat to grab onto that ice, and being thicker so that it doesn't easily break on that hard ice. Where here the grizzly bear claw is longer and thinner, and he's going to use that to basically dig into trees for insects or other foods that he's trying to get to, or dig into the ground for other foods that he's trying to get to. Claws, non-retractable, they're out there all the time, so he's got good traction on there. Really excellent sense of hearing and smell. A polar bear can smell a seal on the ice up to 15 miles away, okay? That's like smelling them cooking your hot dogs down at the ballpark from here, okay? Think about that. He can smell the seal. And he can smell a seal under the ice a mile away. That's how good. So I often say, if you lose something, get yourself a polar bear. A very, very strong animal, and it's very, very agile despite its size. Now, their behaviors change seasonally. Okay, in the March to April time frame, the male searches for a mate. So, all of a sudden we lost Kallu. Well, it was important to get him to Toledo because this is his time of year for breeding. Okay, the male's breeding season will last a couple of months. Female's breeding season typically is much shorter, only lasts for a couple of weeks. And it'll occur over the period of April through June. So, he's going to be looking for females this entire time. And she's only interested in those couple of weeks that she's in estrus. Now, bears, particularly polar bears, they have delayed implantation of the embryo once they do breed. And that is because mom wants to give birth at the optimum time when ring seal pups are birthing. She needs ring seal pups because they're very high in fat to produce the very rich milk that she produces for her young to grow. And I'll get into that in just a little bit. So she can actually reproduce with a couple of males during that couple of weeks that she's in estrus. And when she gives birth, she could give birth to cubs at the same time from two different fathers. So that's the mating season. In April through August, doing a lot of hunting of seals out on the ice. And that's because they're going to be losing that ice as they get deeper into summer, and then they're going to have to come off the ice and live on land in the August to September time frame. Come October, November, the pregnant female, she goes and she's going to den. And she's going to den anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks while she gives birth and then raises the young. The November to January, she's going to give birth and nurse her young in that den until their size picks up. And then come February, April, that's when mom leaves the den with her cubs and knows that there's going to be she can sense it, that seal cubs are going to be plentiful, and that's what we're getting a picture of here, that she's going to be looking to eat those to basically restore her energy sources so that she can feed her cubs. So their behaviors change very seasonally. So it was important then to get Kallu up to Toledo when he left, so that he would be there for when the female there, whose name was Crystal, would go into estrus this season. Because if they have cubs, they only go into estrus once every 3 years.
Once every 3 years?
Yes. Yeah, polar bear cubs need their mothers for 2.5 years. Yeah. So 2/3 of all female polar bears, adult female polar bears in the wild, have cubs with them. So she's going to go in and she's going to den for several months. And when she's in the den, she doesn't eat, drink, urinate, or defecate. Her body recycles biochemically all her waste streams. She can only do that when she's pregnant, okay? When she's not pregnant, if she goes into a den, maybe as a shelter for some sort, it doesn't work. It only works when she's pregnant. So they will go into dens, both males and females. maybe to take shelter, as I indicated here, extremely bad weather, or there's an insect infestation, but in there, she's not able to recycle her waste streams. So she's in there for some number of months, and she's going to live off of her body fat, so she's going to be losing weight. Okay, so after her cubs are born, then she's going to need to bulk up again so that she can continue to nurse them. So let me move on a little bit and talk a little bit more about this whole process. So basically, they're solitary, except breeding and with their young. And females can have 1 to 4. In modern times, it's usually closer to maybe 2, and that's because they don't have as long of a season. Because of global warming, they don't have as long of a season on the ice. So they can't bulk up as much as they would. So they don't have those energy sources in order to take care of the cubs so that they will survive. And in some cases, what will happen is she might give birth to 2 cubs, and the one of the litter may wind up actually dying because she just doesn't have enough milk for them. But historically, they are often found to have 4 cubs at a time. So the young, as you say, will stay with their mothers for about 2.5 years. The other times that you're going to see them is behaviorally together, not being solitary, is if you get a whale carcass that is washed up along the shore, particularly in the summer months. And then you'll see a gathering of polar bears. They're going to eat all that they can, and they're really interested in the fat. Oftentimes they just leave the meat alone, and then other animals will scavenge the meat. Male polar bears will kill cubs, okay? 1, they're looking for food, and 2, it's competition, so they don't want any more competition out there. Females, even though they're half the size of the males, will vigorously defend their cubs, and are usually pretty good at driving off a male. The thing that the cub needs to do is stay close to mom, okay? Because oftentimes, the cub gets scared, runs away, and then the adult male will go after the cub. And once he gets it away from mom, that's when the cub's most vulnerable. Although older cubs, as I indicated here, they actually can outrun an adult male. Okay? See, one of the things with all that fat on their bodies, believe it or not, polar bears don't sweat. So while they run up to about 25 miles an hour, they can't do it very far, otherwise they'll keel over and die of a heart attack. Okay, so if you're ever out there, you just have to run faster than the person you're with. So now, let's go back to the habitat and ranges. The Arctic actually has 19 subpopulations of polar bears. Now, polar bears do migrate around, but only within their range, okay? They don't go across the North Pole. It's too cold up there for them. And most of the ranges are across North America and England. They've got bigger ranges over towards Russia, but there's not as much far-reaching migration in here because there's much more to eat here, and they don't have to go quite as far for food. So the size of the range is going to vary, between prey density in that area, as well as whether the ice is drift ice or stationary ice. So, as I said, indicated before, seasonally they will migrate from the ice pack over to land. They primarily walk. They don't run, for the very reason I mentioned to you before. Plus, they walk slowly, basically conserves energy. They can get up to 25 miles an hour over short distances. They can swim. They're good swimmers. They probably don't swim much faster than we did when we were in our younger ages. And they can dive to about 46 feet. Hold their breath similar, maybe up to about 5 minutes or so. They paddle with their front paws, and they use their back paws as a rudder to change the direction. great distance swimmers. The longest on record, 427-mile swim. When the polar bear came out 9 days later, the polar bear had lost over 20% of its weight. And she also lost her 2 cubs because she needed to find food. And they were out on a floating ice shelf, very far from anything else because of global warming. So she had to try to swim to another larger ice floe. And it took her 9 days, and the cubs didn't have the stamina for it. So swimming for them uses up about 5 times as much energy as walking does. Now, another one of their behaviors is they like to walk crosswind. Okay, if it's a storm, they're going to turn their butts into the wind because that's where most of their fat is. Okay, on their rumps. But otherwise, they're going to walk crosswind, and that enables them to better pick up smells. You know, they're looking to pick up a smell of a seal or something else to eat. And also, it's better able them to pick up, for a male, to pick up the scent of a female who's in estrus. Typically, as you see here in the upper picture, they'll employ a sit and wait tactic. And they may be there, you know, not just hours, but sometimes days, just sitting there waiting for a seal to pop up through that hole, and so that they could grab the seal. Occasionally, you might even see the polar bears at the zoo do this occasionally, where they'll go up on their hind legs and then bounce down on their front legs. And they do that naturally in the wild to create some of these holes in the ice, to create holes where there is none, because the seals will want to come up for air, and then they'll just hang out there motionless for hours on end. In the lower picture here, you see another tactic that they'll use. Well, they'll go into the water and swim underwater for several minutes, and then try to come up behind the seal and grab them from behind. They're also known to go after whales, beluga whales, in the water and take them on and kill them to eat them. Hunting success rate is only about 2% of the time that they go in after something, that they actually catch it. So they may only catch something maybe once or twice a week.
The bare truth of life is that sometimes good neighbors move, or in this case, a polar bear named Kallu that people grew to love over almost 10 years' time.
Kalli the polar bear was sent to the Toledo Zoo. Yesterday, we got a breeding recommendation from the Association of Zoos and Aquariums for Kalli to meet a bear named Crystal, who lives in Toledo. She's had 9 cubs with various males, so I think she's going to like Kalli a lot. But we've been waiting for this day. Although it's bittersweet and we're sad to see Kalli go, we're so happy that he has an opportunity to reproduce. That's a big part of animal well-being. And for the population to have his genetics represented, because he was an orphaned animal, so he has wild genes.
Kalli was orphaned in Alaska, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service selected St. Louis Zoo and the McDonald Polar Bear Point as his new home. Now 12 years old, is headed to Toledo Zoo and Aquarium, where the species survival plan is pairing him with Crystal. And in a move that can be appreciated in a baseball town, 2 cubs are coming to St. Louis.
They're 2.5 years old, and yeah, they're Kallik and Kallu, that means lightning and thunder. One is just over 600 pounds, and the other one's about 750 pounds. So they still have a lot of growing to do. But yeah, they're essentially teenagers in polar bear years.
Crystal's twin sons, Kallu and Kallik, have already moved into the zoo's 40,000 square foot polar bear habitat, the McDonald Polar Bear Point. They are expected to make their public debut in the next few weeks after a quarantine and acclimation period. My guess, they'll become the 2 best-loved cubs by many a Cardinal fan.
In the case of Kalli, he was here for 10 years, so his keepers, you can imagine, it was very emotional and sad for him to go. However, for all the animals here at the zoo, many of them, we know this day will come.
So Kalli's getting chunks of herring today and blocks of lard, 2 of his diet items and 2 that he really enjoys. We like to use positive reinforcement training here at the St. Louis Zoo, And that means that when he does the behavior that we ask him to do, he gets reinforced so he gets a treat, the lard and the fish. So today we were working on target. Basically just means that he touches his nose to the end of a target stick, and that helps us to build on other behaviors. It can get us to help him move where we need him to go if we're training him for a veterinary procedure or something like that. The other behavior we worked on today was lay down. Basically it's asking him to lay down on his belly with his paws out flat. And again, all of these behaviors just help us to take better care of him. They help him to participate in his care. If the veterinarians need to examine a part of his body, so he'll show us his paws, he'll open his mouth, stand up on his hind legs and show off his belly. Good. So we also gave Kalli a little bit of browse. This type of browse with bamboo. He will eat some of the leaves if he wants to, but he more likely will just play with it and sort of manipulate it. He can kind of use his big old teeth to crack it open, or his paws to snap it. We would never share space with him. So as close as we ever get to him is what you saw us doing here at the interactive walls. We always have that steel mesh in between us and the bear. So no, we do not open the interactive walls at the same time every day. We typically do it maybe twice a week, and it's always at varying times. And that's because we don't want Kalli predicting when he's going to be fed. He's never fed at the same time each day. We typically feed him between 5 and 10 times a day from varying locations, using different enrichment items. After we're done with our training session at the interactive wall, we'll lead him away with an enrichment item, and today's enrichment item was a femur bone, so a beef knuckle bone. He has to kind of practice to dive down there and sink in that salt water and go after the bone, and obviously he has to swim and haul himself out of there, and so it's good exercise for him.